Got it. Okay, can you guys see the screen? Continue, see the screen? Hello?
Yes, we can. I can see the screen.
Okay, thought maybe
We just muted.
Okay. Anyway, wanted to say that welcome to everyone that is here. I often tell people I talk to one like I've talked to 1,000, so that's good. But this is a presentation I will be giving on is the presentation I'm giving on tonight is Adobe new 3D engine. Okay, they just released a new 3D engine inside of Photoshop, excuse me, inside of Illustrator that allows you to do some additional 3D features, if you will. I'm going to be talking about that in a bit. There are some pros and cons to this new engine, and we'll talk about that as well. But overall, it's a good enhancement. Now, let me say from the outset that these features is not a replacement for a full-fledged 3D program like Blender or 3D Studio Max or with a Cinema 4D or whatever 3D program that you may use. This is for simple, and the key word there is simple 3D artwork. And an emphasis on artwork, right? So if you want to create some fancy 3D artwork, this would be a good tool of choice, particularly for beginners. More advanced user would probably want to use Blender or some other, if you're doing animation, special effects. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to mention is that because this is a new 3D engine, it is resource intensive, meaning that the more stuff you add to your 3D object, the more performance, not the more performance, the more stuff you add to your 3D object, the more memory intensive it takes to process. And we'll see an example of that. For example, you can create an object, but the size of the object will decrease the performance. Whether you use lighting will decrease the performance of your 3D object when you're rendering it. If you add drop shadow, which is a relatively new feature, that's going to decrease the performance. If you add material to a 3D object, that's going to decrease the performance. So if you add these add-ons, as it were, to an object, it will definitely decrease the performance of how fast it will render it. Now, if you got a fast computer, that's probably a moot point, but just keep that in mind. The more stuff, and that's a technical term, you add to your object, your 3D object, the slower your computer going to run. In fact, I was trying to use the ray tracing, which is a new feature, and we're going to see that. And I can literally, I got an iMac, 27-inch iMac, and I can hear that thing just, I mean, it's grinding, you know? And so depending upon what you're doing will determine how fast or how slow your drawing will render. And we'll see that in time. So let me start off with a box. The first thing you learn when you create a 3D object is a box. Just like when you learn programming, for those of you who've learned programming, what's the first thing you learn when you learn programming? You learn how to display what? Hello world, right? To the world. Okay, well, when it comes to 3D, the first thing you learn how to do is to take a 2D object and make a 3D object out of it. And that's typically a box. And that's what we're going to start off with. And then we're going to add on, and the key word there is add on to that box and create some fancy footwork, if you will. And then maybe part 2, which may be next month, we can get some fancy drawings, if you will, some fancy objects created. But right now, we want to talk about the basics of 3D objects for the beginners. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to delete, I could probably keep this one on for right now in case I may need it. But what I want to do is start off with a 2D object. Typically, most 3D objects are created from 2D objects. In fact, I have a training, let me see if I can pull this up, that I created, and it's still on my website, that talks about all of the different ways you can create 3D objects. So let me go over this really quick. Again, since this is the beginner session, if you will, on 3D objects, there's a boatload, and you guys know that's a technical term, of ways to create 3D object, or what I refer to as the illusion of a 3D object. For example, you can use a gradient. This is just a circle, a round red circle. But if you apply a gradient to that circle, it creates the illusion of a 3D object, right? Another way you can do it, again, you can add different gradients and different angles to create the illusion of a 3D object. So that's one way to create a 3D object, is you use a gradient. The second way to create a 3D object, let's see here, is to use a blending tool. So you can literally just create a multiple blend to create a 3D object. You use Object Blend Make in Adobe Illustrator, and that's going to kind of create multiple instances, if you will, from the first object to the last object in your list, and it can create the illusion of a 3D object. Another way is to use the pen tool. Okay, so if you know how to draw, you can literally, and this is what I've done, I've created this shape and I duplicated it, and then I just kind of manipulated the anchors to create an illusion of a 3D object. It's another way to create 3D object. What we're going to be doing tonight are these ones that I have at the bottom. Rotate, which is the easiest of the four actually now 3D object types that you can create. You're not going to be using rotate that often. Okay, actually it's called plane, I believe, but it literally just takes a 2D object and make it a 2.5D object. And that's good for things like if you're doing, you know, a stack of paper or something like that. We're going to see that in the new engine. Then the other type of 3D object you can create is using the Revolve effect. And basically you just take a shape and you lave it around. If you can imagine, there's a center line right here, and this thing is going around that center line. It creates the shape of this object via that center line. And you can see a lot of that. That's another way to create a 3D object. And then I have several examples of this. By the way, all of this is on my website if you want to take a look at it later. You can see a good example right here. So this is the line in between that. So if you can imagine this thing turning around this line, it's going to create the illusion of in this case right here, of a glass cup, of a wine glass, if you will. So you can see that line right there. It spins around there to create that illusion of a wine glass. And then you can use the extrude and bevel. Notice the two go together, the extrude and bevel. Bevel effects have gotten a lot better in the new 3D engine. We're going to see that. Well, basically, you could take 3D object and give it depth, or width, or height using the 3D object extrude and bevel effect. We're going to see examples of that. And you can do that either with regular object or text objects, if you will. Text is a specialized vector object that behaves somewhat differently than other objects, but you can create 3D objects from it. And so anyway, those are just a few of the ways. We're going to be covering these last three right here, and actually an additional one with the new engine, 3D engine. So having said that, let's pop into Illustrator and look at some of these.
Cornelius, may I ask you to pause for a moment?
Yeah.
I just want to, before you launch into this, I just want to state for the record that this is a meeting of the Austin Adobe User Group.
Oh, I forgot to.
We are meeting virtually online during these pandemic months, and you are Cornelius Chopin. And if you would tell us briefly a little bit about who you are, and you refer to your website, please tell us what that is. And we look forward to hearing the rest of your presentation. I'm sorry, I had to interrupt you. So tell us a little bit about who you are and your company, and then give us the demo, okay?
Okay, good enough.
Thanks.
Okay, so my name is Cornelius Chopin. I work for the state. I'm a accessibility coordinator for the Health and Human Services Department, where we make electronic document accessible to people with disability. I also have my own company that I'm developing some online training in Photoshop and Illustrator and additional software as time permits. But this is a Adobe Users Group. We meet monthly via Zoom since the pandemic started, and we'll continue via Zoom until further notice. And we would encourage everyone to participate in these meetings. They're very informative meetings that are free, and you can view it from the luxury of your own home without having to go out and attend a meeting. Having said that, tonight's meeting, we're going to be talking about 3D in Illustrator using the 3D engine.
I'm going to interrupt you one more time just
Did I
to
miss
add
something?
something. You said that we started during the pandemic meeting on Zoom, but we were meeting for almost 20 years before that as the first is the Austin Macromedia Users Group, and then as the Austin Adobe User Group, we'd meet in person. And hopefully we will do that again one day, but right now Zoom is great, and we welcome people from all around the world in different time zones. So back to you, Cornelius. Thank you.
Okay, do I need to say that, or do you?
No, I just said it. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. I didn't know if you had that recorded.
Yeah,
All right.
it's all recorded.
Okay, so anyway, we're going to be looking at the new 3D engine. Now, there's another tool, which I hadn't learned yet, called Adobe Dimension. And there's several other tools in the Adobe suite of software called Substance. I think they deal with 3D as well. The Adobe Illustrator has been around for 20 years or so, I think. And 3D has been around a long time. A lot of people don't realize you can do 3D inside of Illustrator. They think you can do some crude 3D, but you can do some really fancy 3D. And I've done it when I used to teach at the ITT Technical Institute and at consultantsolution.net and several other companies that I've taught here in the Austin area. You can do some fancy footwork if you know the basics. So anyway, we're going to be talking about the basics today, and perhaps next month we'll look at some more advanced objects that we can create. So having said that, let's talk about how to create a 3D object. Now, in any program, bar none, every 3D object typically starts off with a 2D object that gets converted, keyword there, to a 3D object, most of the time using the extrude, right? And we'll look at what that means in just a sec. But let's check in, you can click on the rectangular Marquees tool, or you can actually hit the M key for the rectangular Marquees tool, and you can draw out, hold on the shift key to constrain it to a square rather. And what I'm gonna do is make the stroke a little bit thinner, just so that we can see the effect of the stroke versus the fill on a 3D object and how it works when you cut it, or if you get a cross-sectional view of it, what happens when you do that. So I want to kind of create, normally you could do either one or the other, but we're going to add both the stroke and the fill to the 3D object to see the effect when we create it. Now, let's go up to the menu to show you where you can get get the panel. You can go up to the Windows panel and go to 3D and Material, and it's going to open up that panel that you just saw a minute ago right here, this 3D and Material panel. In fact, I'm going to just pull it over so you can see it better. So I'm going to close that out. But the most common way to get to it is through the Effect menu, okay, which is similar to the older version of Adobe Illustrator. Now, under that menu, you have all of different options of what you can do. Now, let me talk about what's old and what's new. When you see the word classic, that means the old stuff, right? So you have Extruding Bevel, and notice you got Extruding Bevel up here. You have Revolve, you have that up here, and you have Rotate. Okay, so those are the classical ones. What's new is Inflate. Okay, and we'll see what Inflate in just a bit. And then you have Material, which is also new. And you also have Lighting and Shadow, which is kind of within Material. And so we're going to be looking at all of the new features inside of the new engine, if you will. So let's start off with Revolve, because that's the one that you're probably not going to be using that often. So we click on this one. Not Revolve. Let me Control Z that. Actually, what I want to do is start off. Now, they call it Rotate here, but if you look here, it's called Plane. So I wish they would be consistent in their nomenclature, if you will. It's called rotate here, but it's plain right here. So watch what happens when I select rotate. Notice it selected the plane option in the 3D and material panel. Okay, so that kind of threw me off a little bit. I'm thinking, you know, what is plane versus rotate? Well, they're one and the same. So if I had a suggestion to Adobe department, I would tell them to rename that rotate just to be consistent with their menu that you're selecting from. Anyway, you get this object, and it's a basic 2D object that has been given a offset. You can see the offset right here. Now, there's two ways to manipulate the offset. You can either click on it, cancel with the, now this is new to the 3D engine, where you can click here to rotate this thing via the x-axis. So you click on this line here, this horizontal line, that's the x-axis. If you click on this line, you can rotate it via the y-axis. If you click on the outside line, you're going to click on the z-axis, so you can kind of spin it like a propeller. That's the way I like to think of the z-axis, right? Now, there's one other option. Again, what we call a technical term 3D space, and that is this center option allows you to rotate all three axes, the X, Y, and Z. Well, I like to say Z for my British folks out there. I like to say Z. Okay, and so now you can rotate in all three axes. And if you look at this, notice all three of these. Now, you can manually rotate these too, but it's just fun to grab the things by handle. Now, notice the good news is that in this new 3D engine, this thing literally rotates and renders in real time. Try to do that with the old 3D engine, and it literally grinds to a stall until you stop moving and then it renders, right? But I can literally rotate this thing and it's rendering on the fly. Really vast different from the previous 3D engine. Now, again, on this plane, the plane, I tell the 3D object, and this is the different 3D object type. The plane is plane. Okay, that's how you remember that. Okay, you're not going to be using this one, believe me, that often. Very seldom, unless you're creating like the stack of paper that you saw earlier, you're not going to want to use this one that often. Now, you can also have custom rotation and this is particularly useful for beginners, that you can rotate things via the front, right, left, bottom, top. And then the off axis, you can also rotate it, and we'll see that better when it's a 3D object. This is actually still 2D, just kind of twisted, if you will. And then you have the isometric views, which comes in handy, particularly if you're creating games and other things that you want to keep the perspective the same. So these isometric views can come in real handy when you're creating certain objects. And you'll see that on each of the 3D object types, the presets, if you will. So there's three ways to rotate an object. One, you could rotate it via the rotate widget right here. You could manually rotate it here, or you could select a preset. So whatever tickle your fancy, that's how you rotate an object. It's always about rotating objects in 3D space, and that's a technical term.
Cornelius, may I ask you a question? Yeah. First, what is isometric? And you said you can rotate it from here and here, and you couldn't see what you were pointing to. So could you repeat that and describe what you're grabbing?
Okay, isometric is it's at a fixed angle that allows you to create things easily when you want to line things up. For example, I'm gonna hold on the Alt key and I'm gonna pull out a copy of this, right? Now watch for that. Oh, what happened? Okay, so I pulled out a copy of that. Let me zoom in a little bit there and move that over so you can see it better. Now, watch what happens if I want to take this one and I want to kind of put it on this side right here, right? So I could kind of just go here and see, I put it in the isometric view. Now I can line that up easily. Okay, so you can see using those isometric views allows you to easily align objects without much fuss.
Can I jump in here a second and explain something about that, about isometric drawing?
Definitely.
The coolest thing about it is that you use it for like a mechanical drawing. You don't, not for a realistic look. It's different from a perspective drawing because in perspective, the lines that go back on the Z axis go to a vanishing point.
Right.
And with an isometric drawing, the lines that go back in Z are always parallel at 30 and 60 degrees.
Correct. And what was the other question, Karen?
Sorry, I was muted and I'm forgetting what my other question was. It was, oh, you were grabbing those things and you said you can do it this way or that way, but you showed it quickly, so quickly I couldn't.
Okay, so let me rehearse the different ways of rotating an object.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just move this out of the way for a minute. So there's 3 ways to rotate an object. You can rotate it via this, what they call this, rotate widget, I guess it's what it's called. And so you can click on the X-axis, the Y-axis, or the Z-axis.
How do you click on this? How do you click on the Z-axis?
You click, you see when it changes to that little half circle? You see,
Are you clicking between the X and the Y-axis?
No, I'm just clicking. You see how it's highlighting in what? You see how I highlight? Let me show you. Now, you see how I highlight? I'm gonna get off, get on, get on. You see the difference? You see that circle?
Yes, I'm just wondering what you do to trigger it. Is it just where
you just hover over it?
Okay, thank you.
So you hover. Now watch, when I hover over here, you see it just highlights that.
Yes.
And then if you look closely, you can see that little icon right next to you, tell you how it's going to rotate it, which is kind of cute for beginners anyway. And then I hover over here. I don't know if you can see that one.
Can you zoom in on that part of the screen?
I can't zoom in. I can zoom in on the but the icon's not gonna get bigger though. I don't think. Maybe it will. Let's see. Yeah, that icon's not gonna get any bigger.
Okay. But it's easier to see on the screen. You also have some 3D window open that briefly was blocking what you were showing. Now it's fine.
Okay, so that's one way of doing it. And then you could get right in the middle and you'll see a little globe. When you see right in the, I don't know if you can see it.
Yes,
it's visible. Got to click on it though. But let me see if I can get to it. Okay, you see a little globe? And you see got 2 little circles, ellipse in it. And that means I can rotate this thing and all 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. What they call freeform. You see, rotate freehand. You see that rotate freehand, rotate Z. You see a little tooltip, rotate X, and rotate around Y. Okay, so those are the 3 ways you rotate a 3D object. That's the first way of, I say 3 ways of using this widget. Now, the other way is to use this little thing over here. So you can come over here and do X, Y, and Z. And I wish they, again, I didn't write the book, but I wish they would label this X, Y, and Z. You know, again, just to be consistent. And again, for the average person that's doing 3D, they know X, Y, and Z. But they do have the cute little icons that you kind of, and if you hover over, I guess it does tell you that this is Y-axis, the X-axis. But if I was a company, I would just put X, Y, and Z right here. But that, you know, I have to tell them about that. Okay, and then you have the presets. Okay, if you do front, well, that's the front facing of that object, which is just a box, right? If I do right, you probably just see a line. You see, you probably won't see anything because it's paper thin, right? You don't even see anything when you do right or left. But if I do top, you're not going to see anything because there's no top to this thing. The plane is plane, as I mentioned. You got to keep that in mind. Plane is plane. You're not going to be using this 3D type that often. Okay, the best thing you can use it for, as I mentioned, if you're doing something like this, if I hold on my Alt key and I want to drag out several copies, right? I want to do something like that. That's probably a good use for using the plane object or the plane 3D type, I should say. But not that often you're going to be using plane. because you don't really need to use a 3D object. You could do anything in Illustrator and just make a copy of it and do that, right? Okay, so let's talk about the more interesting one. I'm gonna just delete this one and draw another shape. Again, I hit the M key and hold on the Shift key to constrain it to a square. And now I'm gonna go into the fun part, or the fun type, which is the extrude, revolve, and inflate. Now, inflate is a new one. It's a new 3D type that wasn't available in the old engine. Okay, let's look at it. But you're going to always be using these two, I promise you. Now, again, this one is new to me, and I hadn't found a whole lot of use for it of yet, because it's relatively new to me. But I promise you, if you're doing any kind of 3D work, you will be using extrude, and there's actually extrude and bevel, and rotate and revolve. Okay, you will be using those two. Now let's look at this one. Okay, this is a plane shape. We want to make it a 2D shape, a 2D square. We want to make it a cube, if you will. So we click on this one, or if you go up to the menu and do effect, and then go down to extrude and bevel. And again, I wish they was consistent in their terminology. Again, I would name this extrude and bevel, but again, I didn't write the book. Now you can see that it gave it some depth, right? Now, once you select that 3D object type, you can extend the depth of it just by pulling on this like that, right? And you can make it really big or really small, depending upon what size you need. Okay, so you could, now, the reason why I wanted to maintain both the fill and the stroke is to let you know that the stroke is the quote unquote, if I can use this human analogy that you can relate to, that's the skin of the object. You can understand what I'm talking about, right? That's the skin. And let me just illustrate something even to extend, you know, I love to use analogies. To extend that analogy, let me do this, because this is fun. You know, I like to have fun. If I make this 1 point, okay, that's thin skin. You know, some people are thin skin, right? Now, if I bump this up and let's do something crazy like 8, now you have thick skin. Okay, that's where you should be. You should be thick skin. Okay. So anyway, that'll help you remember that the stroke is the skin of the object. Now, some people have no skin, right? So if you click on this and dismiss, you know how you get rid of the stroke, you get rid of it. Well, then you have no skin. So now you just have the object. So this is for you candy lovers out there. This is the coating. Let me put a little chocolate on there. Okay, maybe get a little dark chocolate. See if I can get dark brown in here. I don't know if I can. Okay, there we go. Actually, I wanted to do that. Now I'm gonna bump this up. So this would be the coating, if you will, around the object. So think of the skin, I mean the stroke as either the skin or the coating around an object. And the other stuff is the actual object on the inside. That black box is actually inside of this thing, right? And you can always remove this at any time. See, if I click here, it removes that skin or that coating, as it were. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. So you can control the depth of an object, and I'm gonna change this back to nicer color than that. Okay, so you could change the depth of an object just by pulling on this slider. You can change the cap. Now, what is the cap? The cap is a cap. Okay, so watch what happens when I click on this. I don't know, let me now. You can see it removes the top and the bottom. Now, it's kind of hard to see that it's actually going all the way through. So let me use my selection tool, and I'm gonna rotate this where you can see it using my rotate. You see, I can see all the way through it now. You see that? Now, look how nice. By the way, when you're rotating this, you get a what they call a low resolution view of it. You see how it's pixelated? It's not until you release it that it renders a full version of it. So when I release it, bam, okay, you get the full version of it, right? Now I can see through that box. So if you want to cut a way through it, you can use this technique. Okay, so keep that in mind. And notice a nice little shadow going in there. We hadn't even talked about shadow yet, but we'll see how to implement outside shadow. These are just shadows from lighting, ambient lighting, that's automatically associated with object, which is really nice. I don't think the previous version of 3D Engine had this capability where it rendered the shadow inside of an object as nice as this. Now, by the way, if you click outside of this widget, you move the object instead of rotating the object. So what they call translation instead of rotation. A lot of times people get those two confused, right? This is translating, meaning you're moving from side to side, up and down. But when you click on this, then this is rotation, right? So it's rotating like on a fixed axis. Just imagine this being tied to a what is that? The little stand, right? And you can pivot on that stand, right? So that's what rotation does for you. But translation is when you grab it outside of the handles, you can move it up and down, left and right, or wherever you want. And then you can scale it. That's another form of translation, right? Now that will distort it because you're actually distorting the 3D engine inside of it. If you want to change the object, it's best to use the 3D engine and not the object itself to distort it. So what else can you change? So let me turn the cap back on. You can turn on a bevel. So now if you click on a bevel, you get these objects, these classical bevel types. And what I want to do is go through a couple of these because some of these are really cool. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I tell you what, let me do this because it's kind of hard to see with the stroke on. So let me take the stroke off and I'm gonna give this thing a different color so you can see this better. Now you can see that bevel better. And that's really, okay, there we go. So you kind of see that bevel right there. So let's look at this bevel and the way it works. So this is classic bevel, right? This is the round bevel. You're going to kind of smooth the edges, if you will, like kind of sanding the edges for you woodworkers out there. You can appreciate that. That's a nice bevel. And you can kind of see what it's going to look like via the little shape here, the icon next to it. That's the step. Now, the step is really nice because what it allows you to do is you can kind of make it larger, smaller, but also extend the height of that bevel. So you can create some really interesting 3D objects just by kind of beveling stuff and just pulling out that bevel, if you will. Now, what's really fun is when you start doing the repeat. So watch what happens when I click on the repeat. Notice, as the name implies, it repeats the bevel, right? So it's going to repeat those bevel, again, depends upon the size of the object, how many times you need to repeat it. And then space, it will space how far you repeat it. So if I click here, notice it's spacing those bevel objects. Now, again, this is all new to the 3D engine. I'm loving this because I'm thinking I could think of some creative ideas on doing some fancy footwork using that. Now, it gets even better. As one guy used to say, there's more where that came from. You could do the inside bevel. Well, watch this. You click on this little checkbox, bam. Notice it pushes the bevel not outside, but inside, or which sometimes you may refer to as inset, right? So it pushes the bevel on the inside. So you can see you can create some really fancy 3D object from a simple square box, if you will. Okay, and I'm just beginning. And again, this is part one, but you could do some fancy footwork if you just have some creative thoughts on how to do it and what to do, and that was just the extrude. Now, so again, you can change the depth, you could change the cap, you could turn this thing on or off. You see that again, I can cut a hole through it. You could change the bevel. Again, it should be called extrude and bevel right here, I think. Okay, and then if you hit the reset, that just resets it back to normal, and then you can turn that bevel off right here. And I like the fact too that you can turn those things on and off at will, which is nice. And then obviously you have your rotation, as we spoke of earlier, like you did it with the plane 3D object, which is plane. You can also use your all your custom presets, or I love to use the freeform because I like to rotate things on my own terms, if you will. So there you have it. That's the 3D object type that is called the extrude and bevel. Now let's look at another one. I don't know why this is giving me, it's not rendering right. There we go. So let's look at another type of object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one out of the way for right now. Just move down here. Now, let me ask you, I'm going to hold on the shift key. I'm going to draw this. What kind of shape do you think I'm going to get if I click on this icon? I'm going to get a square shape or a circular shape? Can anybody tell me?
Looks like some cheese.
Okay. Yeah. So if I click on that object, what it does is, remember, if you can imagine, there's a line right here. Okay. And just imagine this little plane wrapping or going in a circle, right, all the way around that line to create a 3D object like what you see right there, like you say, the cheese making me hungry there. Watch when I click on this, bam. Okay. And again, you can just, now every 3D object has different parameters, right? Now, again, you could come over here and scale this up, and it's going to scale it based upon the size of that object. Or if you want to add some icing on this cake, just imagine this being a cake. I'm using all kind of analogies tonight, am I? Let's put some icing on the cake. No pun intended there. How you like that? Okay. Okay, so I just add icing on the cake. I like that. And then I can do some other things. Now watch. I know this is all good because I'm making these analogies up on the fly and they're funny though. So watch what happens when I click the revolve button here, angle rather. If I click this, look, I can cut the cake. How cool is that? And let me rotate it so the other way so you kind of see it a little bit better. I need to make sure you're on this tool right here. And I'm gonna rotate it. There you go. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Cornelius, may I throw a challenge out at you unexpectedly?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm inspired by this pink cake with the icing. And if you could put the slice back, I'm wondering if you could inscribe it on, like decorate it on top with some.
We're gonna talk. I talk about that later because one thing that you can't do that and I hope they fix this. You can't paint. You can't add texture to a 3D object with a new 3D engine. You could do it with the old one.
Could you add a layer of text that would be attached to the top of the shape?
You can with the old engine, but not with the new. I'm gonna show you. I'll show you an old one to prove what I'm saying. You can't add any kind of object or what we call texture to an object, a 3D object, besides the material.
And
object.
would text be considered a texture?
Yeah, text or anything. I can't add anything to that object except the material. That's the only thing I can add. Sad but true. But I'll show you how to do that though with the old engine.
With the old engine, I'm curious, could you make it 3D? Like, could you make it look like 3D frosting on the cake?
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let me do this. Let me pull out the
And while I've interrupted you and you keep talking about this engine, could you please explain for us beginners, what is an engine and what is the old one versus the new one?
Okay, good question. Good question. Let me kill those two birds with one stone. And so if you click on this one, notice you get this little widget, right? And remember, we use this these set of options. This is the new engine. Engine means just a way of doing stuff, right? So these are the new 3D tools in a new 3D engine. Now this one is the classic. So let's do the same.
Cornelius, for those of us who can't see what's on the screen because it's small, could you just tell us what these options are?
Okay, yeah. I don't know why it's not that big on your screen. Maybe, I don't know. I can't make it any bigger. So I have these options that comes out when I do the 3D materials: Extrude Bevel, Revolve, Inflate, Rotate, Material, and then the last one in the list is called 3D Classic. Now that's the old 3D engine, just the way the software. When I say engine, I'm talking about software, I guess a better way of stating that. And these are the old one. Now let's do the same thing that we did with Extrude and Bevel with the old engine. Watch what happens. So notice now I have a different dialog box. See the dialog box right here? It's different from this one. This is the new way of doing stuff. This is the old way. Now watch, I got Extrude and Bevel. And hold on, let me see. Let me count it. I need to select this object first. And then let me do that again. Extrude and Bevel. No, not Extrude and Bevel. That's not what I want to do. I'm thinking. I want to do the Revolve. Right. So watch what happens. So I'm gonna click on this right here. And why am I not getting? Hold on, let me think for a second here. Why is it not rendering? Okay, there we go. I don't know why I wasn't rendering. Okay, so now I got the same thing you see there, right? Now notice I had this what we call avatar. And again, notice I hover over here, that's the X. Notice that's the Y and the Z. And then if you hug in the middle, you get all three. Now notice, look, when I rotate this thing, you see it doesn't even render in real time. You see the little, what they call wireframe view of it? I gotta let this thing go, this little avatar that I'm moving, I gotta let it go before it renders it. Okay, this one, I can literally click on this thing and move it and render it at the same time in what we call real time, right? So this is the old engine. It's slow as dirt. That's probably a poor analogy, but it's slow. Okay, so anyway, let me rotate this. Now, what? I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna slice it just like we did this cake. Y'all like that analogy, the cake? And see right here, I got the cap too. Remember the little cap? So I can remove the cap. Now watch. Okay, so you see I'm slicing the cake. Now, because I removed the cap, let me turn the cap back on. And you can see it's slicing inside of the cake. So I got the same, almost the same thing. Now, the good news is that I got this map art feature. That's what I wish they had in here. Okay. Now, when I do map art, watch what happens. You get these 16 faces, if you will, of this object. Okay. And you can tell what's shown by the if it's bright, is in sight. That's how I remember that. If it's dark, I need to think of a Chopin isn't for that one. But let me show you. That face one is this thing right here. If I want to put something right there, I can just pick anything and just put it there. Let me put a little flower right there. You see that little flower right there? Okay, that's the face one of this object. If I click on the next face of the object, that is, it's not in view because it's dark. Okay, so that's probably that the cake itself. This is kind of like one side of it. There's another side of it. Well, if I put something on that one, you're not going to even see it because it's out of view. Anything in dark is out of view. Let me click on them. This is 2 out of 16, so there's several of them here. If I do 3, okay, that's one. I think that's the top. In fact, you can kind of see where it highlights it, right? So let me put a little icing on the top of the cake, to borrow a phrase. If I go up here, you see this little thing right here? I'm gonna call this my icing. Okay, and I just splatter that. I'm having too much fun with this. On top of that cake like that. Watch what happens when I commit that. Where did it go? Okay, let me try that again. Okay, I am on vector grind 3. Why is it not showing? Maybe that's the bottom one. No, that wouldn't be the bottom one.
Maybe.
That should be showing up at the top here. See how it's highlighted right there? Okay, let me go to another one. Okay, that's the bottom, I know, because it's dark right here. That's the side over here. So maybe I could put something on that side. Let me see. That's really weird that it's not even working anymore. This should be showing up right here. Okay, because anything in light is in sight, right? And for some reason, this stupid thing is not working. So maybe they broke this 3D engine because it's not working. I'm telling you, I've done this for many years, and this is not working at all. But you should be able to map things on the surface of this object, but you can only do, you saw I did it right here. So let me do it to a square. I know a square works. So let me commit this, click OK. Click OK again. And I'm gonna hit delete. So let me do it to a square. Let me show you a better view of what I'm saying. I'm holding on the shift key to constrain it. And then I am going to, I got these symbols over here. Let me move it down. So you see a little dice, I'm gonna do a little dice. Okay, now first of all, I'm gonna do effect 3D, and I'm gonna do the Extrude Bevel, right? And I'm gonna extend it out a little bit. That's too much, about that size. And I'm gonna take off the, I can't do it right now, but what I wanna do is, I'm gonna click OK, and I'm gonna take off the stroke, actually. I'm gonna go back in here and show you how to add it. Now, once you commit an object, you need to go to the appearance panel in order to make changes. So if you go up to Windows, Appearance, that's how you get back into that 3D engine, if you will, for that object. So here's the appearance panel. And you see right here, Extrude Bevel Classic. So if I click on that, it's going to open this dialog box back up. Now, what I want to do is, this box has, how many faces? It has 6 faces, right? You got the top, bottom, left, right, back, and front. So watch, and you can see, I'm going to add these little dice things onto them. So I got them in my symbol library. Yeah, so right, so I'm gonna click here, and I'm gonna scale this down. You see, it added it to this side. Now, if I want to put something at the top, well, let me get around to it. Let's see, that's the back. You can see it highlighting in the back there. So I can't, even if I put something there, I wouldn't be able to see it unless I rotate it to the back side of it. You guys tracking me? Anytime it's dark, I'm trying to get a little Chopinism out of this. Help me out, you guys. If it's dark, it won't walk or something like that. Anyway, I'll work on that. Okay, the third one is, see, that one is this back side over here. If you can take the back side of this thing. So that one won't work. What's the next one? Okay, that one is this side right here. Okay, so let's add a symbol to it. Let's add the number 4, and I'm gonna scale it to make it look nicer. You see, I pop that right in. And then I'm gonna go to the next one, which is the top. And I could put another one. Let's put 6 up there, and we'll scale that shape. And this could be anything, by the way. This could be text. It could be another 3D not another 3D object, but it could be text, a symbol, a drawing, whatever you want. You make it into a symbol, and it's going to show up in this symbol list right here. So you can literally create a symbol and add it to this object. Okay, you can't do that with the new. Remember, I told you the pros and cons. This is one of the cons that I don't like. Okay, you can't map stuff to, and I do this all the time, by the way, when creating 3D objects, because I want to put text, I want to put labels and paintings, and all kind of stuff onto the face or faces of a 3D object. And the new engine currently doesn't allow you to do that. Okay, now another drawback to the 3D object is that it doesn't allow you to do, a minute, just click OK on that. Why is it not going? Okay, slow today. It doesn't allow you to hide the surfaces of the object and just show what's mapped onto the object. Let me illustrate that. Probably a poor example with this, but I think I can illustrate it. Let me show you that. Let me go back to map art. Now watch, you see this option right here? I used to use this quite a bit. If I select this invisible geometry, it's going to remove the object but maintain those texture that I mapped to those at least 3 faces that you can see. So watch what happens when I click on this. Okay, now again, it doesn't really make sense on this object, but if you got a spiral object, this makes a real nice nice effect if you got a spiral object you're working with. But it hides the object and just maintain the whatever you mapped onto, and that's the technical term, right? Map onto the face of that object. Okay, so those are the 2 things I wish you could do with the new version, but you can't. So I can't put icing on a cake, a decoration. I could put icing, you see that? This is, by the way, this is red velvet cake. Since I'm extending that analogy, when I took a big slice of it too. I'm having too much fun with that. Click OK. So anyway, this is the old 3D engine. And by the way, another thing that you can't do, which I thought is, you can't do the wireframe. Okay, you said a wireframe. Sometimes I like to create wireframes and stuff. Let me click OK of that so you can see it better. Cancel. Okay, so you see that? So I like, sometimes it's nice to create like little wireframes or things. You can't do that in a new 3D engine. So depending upon what you do will determine which engine you can use. If you want to do mapping stuff to a surface of an object, you got to use the old 3D engine. If you want to do invisible object, you got to use the old 3D engine. If you want to use wireframe, you got to use a 3D engine. Okay, I know I spent a lot of time on that, but that was good. That was. I think that's some useful information for you guys to know. And if you guys have questions, because I'm not checking the chat, just speak up so I can know.
I'll just speak up to say that this has been just terrific, and I think you've given us more than enough for one evening. I don't know what else you have in mind, but this is
well.
really impressive.
I hadn't even started. I hadn't even started on the on the new engine. You know, I mean, not much anyway.
Right.
So anyway, let's see if we can go about another 20 minutes. What time we started?
It's well, I think, I'm not sure when we started the recording the program, probably at 6:15.
Okay.
So we're coming up to about an hour now.
Okay, so what time? What time was my cutoff time?
You're a little past it. No,
Oh,
actually, I'm sorry. Excuse me. No, you got another 20 minutes to go for our normal time, and then we just spend the last half hour talking things up,
Okay.
over.
Well, let me spend another 20 minutes, and then
Okay.
we probably do a part 2 of this.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is we could actually have a series of shorter, maybe 20-minute presentations, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For the next few months.
We could do that. Yeah, we could do that. But let me wrap this up because I want to show you the difference between the two and some other fancy footwork that you can do. And then we're going to use some primitive shapes today. I was really looking at doing some really fancy stuff, but we can save that for part 2, which will be interesting to say the least. So let's look at some other things you can do with this new 3D engine, if you will. So let's go back to our primitive shape again, like so, and let's use the 3D engine dialog box. And let's see what I'm gonna do. Oh, yeah, so once you create an object, let me go back to to that one. Okay. Now, what I was saying was you could go, you could use the Revolve engine. We saw how to do that, right? We could do the offset. Now, the offset, let me explain the offset. Offset basically widens the object and put like a hole in the middle of it. So if you want to create a, going back to my analogy of cake, I'm in a cake mood tonight. You know, you can have the little, what is the cake with the little hole in the middle? Let me show it to you like that. You know how you had the little hole in the middle of cake, I don't know, pancake, a pound cake or whatever.
It's a bundt cake,
there you go,
BUNDT.
There
I
you,
had to get unmuted.
there you go, your bundt cake, huh? Okay, so if you want to cut a hole in an object, you use the offset, right, to do that. Okay, now, you got to be creative to think about what type of object you want to create. And once you get used to creating 3D objects, it's fairly easy. So most people don't realize that you can just create, if you want to create an object with a hole in it, you just give it an offset. Now, the offset allows you to create a hole, but you can also use the direction of the offset to create different type of objects. Now, if I use this one, it's not gonna make much difference between left or right. But watch what happened. And in fact, let's do cap. I mean, you saw cap earlier. So this doesn't even work with this, and this doesn't work. But let me do another object. I'm gonna use my pen tool because I do this one all the time when I'm creating a 3D object. So what I want to do is, let's see here. Which one? Change my tools up on me. Oh, there we go. So watch, I'm gonna use my pen tool and I'm gonna create an outline of a shape of a, I'm wondering if y'all can tell me what this is. Oh. Control Z. I did kind of mess up that a little bit. Now, one thing I got to mention too that's important is that when you're creating a shape, particularly when you're going to revolve a shape, you want to just have the stroke and not the fill. So I'm gonna turn the fill off. So you can kind of, now you can almost see what type of object that is, right?
That's a wine glass.
Huh? That's a wine glass. Okay, so let's see what happens when I apply a 3D effect to it of the extrude effect, of the extrude type. In fact, let me hold on the Alt key and we'll duplicate it, drag out a copy, because I want to see what happens with the other engine too. But maybe, and maybe not for the sake of time. Let's just do this. Watch this. So I'm gonna do this one right here. Bam. Now, maybe that look not like, more like a wine glass. So what we can do is we can always manipulate.
Oh, you're like a magician.
So anyway, let me refine this, because obviously this is too fat right here, right? So you want to pull this in. Let me grab it. Okay, see what I'm doing? And then maybe I want to pull this up a little bit like that. And then maybe I want to pull it in like that. Now, there you go, right? You follow me? And then I might want to, I don't know if you're gonna let me do it while I'm in that dialog box, but I was trying to make this thinner, but you guys get the drift there. But anyway, I created that object, and now, again, now if I could cut it, you can see you see I'm cutting it. It's from the back side though. I'm cutting it, and let me go all the way around so you can kind of see it. See, I'm cutting it, what they call cross-sectional view of it. Or if I give it an offset, that's weird. Okay. Now, watch what happens. And the reason why I wanted to bring up this is that watch what happens if I go to the other edge. So right now it's offsetting from the left edge, which is the most obvious way to draw a shape. You can kind of see the edge to draw from. But watch what happens when I go to from the right edge. I'm gonna get a totally different shape. So if I click on this, bam. Notice now it's lathing from this edge. You can kind of see how it's cutting through here. It's cutting here, right? So you get a totally different shape depending upon what edge you lathing from. Okay, so let me go back to the right edge, or the left edge rather, to get that. Now, it depends upon how you manipulate that shape to get a totally different shape as well. For example, if I use my 3D tool, I could rotate this again, in the technical term is 3D space, right? But if I went outside of the 3D space and rotate this, watch what happens. I get a totally different shape rather. Now, if I rotate the whole object, not just its point, but the whole object, I'm gonna get a totally different shape because it's gonna be lathing it along a different axis. Watch this. Okay, so I'm just putting that glass sideways. It's the same glass, you see that? But now it's lathing it on a water angle, right? To get a, I don't know what you want to call it, fruit bowl. I'm into the food business tonight, am I?
Is anybody else having difficulty grokking this? I mean, I saw it twice now, and I just don't understand what it. Am I seeing a negative of what I was seeing before? I just don't understand the logic of what's changed. Can you give me some anchors in the before and right to left and how?
Okay, yeah. So now this is kind of hard to see. I mean, and I probably have to illustrate it via 3D. But if you look at this shape right here, just imagine there's a physical line, a line in there, and this thing is just, that whole shape is going around it. That's what creates this 3D object, right? Via that edge. Let me click on it. Via the left edge, right? So it's kind of taking this, and if it rotates to the left, it's going to create that shape. Now, if you rotate it to the right edge, again, it might be hard to see, but now it's kind of taking it, and I don't know if I wish I could draw it. Maybe I could use this one as an example. It's taking this thing here, and let me see if I can flip this over to the other side. Okay, yeah, you kind of see what it's doing now?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense? So now it's cutting it like that, but around the surface of it instead of the other way. So I'm glad I did that. That was a good little analogy there. Thank you. Can you see that better? You can see if I use this as my saw.
That really helps. And maybe you could just do it again, pull it away so it's a wine glass, or
Yeah.
pull it.
So you look at the wine glass. Look, the wine glass is this way. Oh, and then you can really see it now. So you see the wine glass is facing this way, and this one is going the other way. You guys see? Now, if I was to do this to that wine glass, let me see what I get. Let me see what I get.
It looks like I'm seeing the negative space between two wine glasses. Or I'm seeing
basically, yeah, that's what you're kind of getting in essence. Okay, now let me do the same thing to this one. Let's see what happens. No, that was extrude. Didn't want to do that. I want to do the revolve. Okay, so that's, and I think I may have moved something on here, but you're basically getting the same shape, and that's because I flipped it. Oh, that's the reason why it looked different, because I flipped it and manipulated. Remember? So now, if I
can you explain at the bottom where it looks like it's on a pedestal?
Yeah,
what is it that's creating that?
Yeah, this thing right here. If you can imagine, let me flip it over again. Let me see, transform. I'm gonna just flip it the other way. Let me just flip it like that. Okay, so if you can imagine this being a blade, right? And I'm coming in here, and this one is not, it's off a little bit. Let me see if I can manipulate this a little bit so you can see it. Yeah, maybe I can bend it a little bit. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. So if you can imagine this being a blade and it's going all the way around that object, right? And cutting out, you know, let's say that was a cylinder, right? It's going around and it's cutting all of the stuff off and you're being left with that. Okay, whereas this, let me see if I can pull out a copy of this. I'm gonna turn this thing left, and can I get rid of the what am I looking for? Let me delete. There we go. Okay, that's what I was trying to do. So now when I have the wine glass, make a copy, and let me make that a wine glass using. Not going. Oh, must be already got an object. Okay, okay, you can't apply a 3D 3D. It's still applied. That's the reason why it's not working. I guess the only thing I can do is delete it. There we go, and then reapply it. Yeah. So I was trying to apply a 3D effect to a 3D effect, and that'll let you do that. But if you look at this one, you can see how now this matches that. And now it's cutting on the inside of the glass. If you can imagine this going all the way around that, right? It's going to cut this glass out. And if this take it from this end and go around it. And again, I really have to kind of literally create a 3D object of this in order for you to really see it. But it depends upon what angle you're cutting from. You're basically flipping it and cutting it from the other side of the profile. So you create a profile. If you reverse the profile, you're going to get this. If you keep the profile, you're going to get this. That makes sense?
Makes sense.
That was well, I did not even scratch the surface of what I wanted to cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to save the rest for part 2. Maybe a part 3, because at the rate I'm going, it's not too far. But I think this is all good stuff, though. In fact, and I'm glad somebody mentioned that, because I can really see this now. And then this right here gives me a really good analogy of how that's being done. Basically, all I did was went from there to there. So this is the left edge, that's right edge.
Ah,
vice versa, right?
that makes it very clear.
And that's how it's being cut. And just imagine that, I don't know if you know what a lathe is, right? You think of a table leg and how it's cut. They use a lathe to cut those fancy grooves in a table leg, right? And that's what you're doing in essence here.
It's a table LATHE. Our transcription is misspelling it as LAG.
What was that?
It's spelled LATHE, I think.
Okay.
Lathe.
So anyway, that's my Louisiana twang anyway. Any questions before we go? Again, I promise you, I hadn't even covered half of what I wanted to cover. And in fact, I think we spent more time on the old 3D object engine than we did on a new. Let me throw one.
I have a practical question. I mean, I'm really oblivious to the game world, and maybe this all has to do with imaginary worlds that you create 3D objects for. But what might a graphical designer use this for?
Well, a good question. So you could take a text like, let me give you a preview of what we're gonna be, where we was going with this. Okay, you could take a text like this. Well, let me give it a different. Now you don't want to use black, by the way, when you're using, because it's not going to render correctly. You can extrude text like that, just that easily. You could throw some texture on it like that, and then you can throw a shadow on it. Let me just throw a shadow on top of that. Hide this. Do some lighting. I could throw me some lighting, and I could throw me a shadow on it, and I send it to the back. Move it around, you know, so I can move that shadow
Yeah,
around.
if you refine this a little bit, we could use it on our website. We really need to do something to replace the logo that's there.
So anyway, see, so I could adjust the lighting, I could adjust the shadow, I could add any kind of texture I want to this object. A material and lighting is the two new features. And there's a boatload of texture. You can see all of them right here. And you can find more texture. You could go to the community and there's texture, but there's a lot of cool different textures that you can. And again, you can do this with any kind of object. Okay, and then literally apply any kind of texture from metallic to glass. This is a fancy one. Now, and then you can use it what they call ray tracing. Now, ray tracing will slow your computer to a crawl, but it's going to give you a photorealistic view of that texture. So I click on this. And notice now how nice that looks. It literally will give you a good rendering when you have that. You don't want to keep this thing on because it will slow your computer down to a crawl. And then again, you can adjust the lighting. And once you adjust the lighting and select the object, only what's selected, Sherry know what gets affected. And so look, you can adjust the lighting. And then when you go to shadow, you can adjust the shadow, you know, and move it around. I think I still got that. You got to turn this thing off or it's going to slow you down to a crawl. You see, I keep on and want to render it. That's because this thing is on. Keep that thing off. So you can, you know, you can move your shadow around, the bounds of the shadow, you know, depending upon, or you could do it from the back behind the object and move it. And do, you know, and again, we'll show more of that the next time. I didn't even talk about the material and the lighting and some of the other things that you can do. We didn't talk about Inflate. We just scratched the surface on these two. And this one here, again, you're not gonna ever use that often. And then, but we did do some old 3D engine work. That was cool. Anyway, let's pick up the ball, or pick up the cake, I should say, at the next month's meeting. We'll be doing part 2 of this.
That sounds terrific. I can see this stretching out into 3 dimensions.
Yeah, and
these 3 meetings.
Yeah, and again, that's some really cool. I taught 3D at ITT Technical Institute for about 5 years, and you'd be amazed at what you can do just with some creativity. And again, this is not no 3D Studio Max or high-end 3D program, but most 3D, if you could think of how they compose of simple 3D or 2D objects, you can create some fancy stuff. And we'll save that for next time. I'll come up with some examples of, I was really hoping to do my gear, which is a common thing you do in 3D, and how to use a Pathfinder tool or the shape builder tool to create these 2D object to convert into a 3D object fairly easily. So you could take a shape like, and I'm gonna close out with this real quick. I'm gonna take this star right here, let's say, and I'm gonna draw another circle on top, and I'm gonna change the color just so you can see this. And I'm gonna do this rather fast. And I'm gonna move this on top of it, right? And I'm gonna select, move that out of the way. I'm gonna select both of those, and I'm gonna go to my window Pathfinder, because that's what I'm used to. And I'm gonna punch a hole in it, okay? Now I'm gonna use my 3D object. And voila, I can extend this and I can rotate this however I want. Just that fast, I've created that object, you know, without much fuss. Okay. And so, yeah, you just getting creative, you can create some fancy stuff, and I can add some texture, I can evolve it, I can add, you know, lighting material on it, you know, and get really fancy with this in no time flat, literally.
That's very exciting and interesting. And I'm also wondering if perhaps for one of the future meetings, whether it's not something I do frequently, but could we go to Adobe's, I think it's called Behance, if they still have that, and look for examples of what people are doing with this 3D tool?
Yeah, you could probably do that. I've never heard of it. I've never done, you know.
Yeah, you and me both. But it just might be an
But
interesting.
if you Google let me do this real quick. Just show you this, because this is what I do. I go to my friend Google, and then I type in 3D objects, the 3D objects in Illustrator, in Adobe Illustrator. And then I'm gonna see if I can find, let's see. So here we go, right? I mean, that's just a few things. There go my cup that you saw earlier, right? Oh, by the way, look at that. Remember, they're going the other way, right? Look at that, look, see right here, look, you know, that shape right there is just a couple shapes that they, you know, they drew and, oh, look at that.
Wow.
So yeah, so just a little imagination, and that's just one page. I mean, if you go through this website, believe me, you come up with all kind of.
Could you put the link to that website
look,
into the chat
they
room?
even got. I'm on the link. Wow, that's my website.
Good for you.
You recognize
Well,
that?
would you put that into our chat room, please?
Yeah, let me.
And I'm sorry to say I didn't see that 45 minutes ago somebody emailed us asking for the Zoom link. I just sent it to them. I don't know if they'll show up.
Well, let me just go up here to get it. I mean, that's nice. Okay. Well, this went faster than I thought. So I'm typing that in, right? And we'll paste that in. Is that to everybody? There you go. Okay, so that's a link to my old stuff, if you want to look at that. But again, I've literally scratched the surface on this.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
We look forward to seeing the second act.
Yeah. It's gonna be.
And that will be on March 14th. I'm
Okay.
sorry, April 14th.
Yeah,
April 14th.
Yeah.
Second weekend of April, 6 p.m. Central Time, and we will be on daylight savings time by then.
Yeah, I think it's daylight savings
This weekend. It's this weekend. So this has been another terrific presentation. Thank you. I'll just say that you've been a member of this group since it was first started, way back as Macromedia.
Long time ago.
Yeah, yep. And I appreciate that you share a wealth of information. So we'll record this and put it up on the website, and keep inviting people. I really appreciate the things we discussed earlier about how to spread the word. And if you have additional ideas, just email us about it, okay?
Okay.
Very
enough.
good. Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Cornelius.
See you guys.
I'm gonna end
Looking
this
forward to
meeting.
the next one.
What was that?
Looking forward to the next one.
Okay.
Super. Bye, Carol.
Bye.